isn't just TV drama anymore, darling. On set, it began like every other day. Makeup touch-ups in the corner, cameras rolling, and the usual rumors circulating around the helpers and producers. However, something felt off. A tense quiet that hummed too loudly pervaded the atmosphere. When Yandy came, she looked as composed and professional as usual, as if nothing ever upsets her. However, her eyes revealed that she was exhausted and wary, as if she hadn't slept through the night. No one had the courage to inquire, but the staff noticed. They simply waited for her to put on that perfect outfit after making her up. She has perfected the pace of reality TV throughout the years. That rhythm didn't hold today, though. They felt uneasy since there was an awkward quiet as soon as Rasheeda entered, without an embrace or eye contact. Rasheeda made an effort to hide it by grinning and acting as though nothing was wrong. However, after viewing the uncut video, people would claim to have seen her eyes flicker as if she was aware of the impending storm. Naturally, Mendeecees turned up even though he wasn't meant to be, as if he hadn't. They'd been hiding in corners and having covert meetings with people Yandy had explicitly instructed him to avoid for the last few weeks. During a casual scene setup, everything came to a head. They were instructed to sit and just catch up by the director. Easy, clean, and unscripted. However, Yandy didn't even pretend when she sat down and noticed Rasheeda sitting opposite from her with Mendeecees lurking close by. Let's stop pretending because I'm not about to keep smiling while people I trusted stabbed me in the face, she stated, folding her arms and staring directly into the camera. Everyone froze. Back, Rasheeda blinked, protective yet perplexed. What are you discussing? Her voice was clipped yet low as she inquired. Mendeecees averted his gaze as if he already knew. First, Yandy turned to face him. She added, "You told me you had my back," with a slight break in her voice. "You said you weren't speaking to her after what she pulled. And now I find out you've been going behind my back trying to smooth things over." Mendeecees attempted to intervene. Yandy was only attempting to correct it. "Don't," she yelled. Rasheeda sat up taller, her face tightening, and said, "Don't gaslight me. You're upset with me now. Then due to your man's desire to make things right, how can I blame that?" Yandy wiped the back of her palm over her cheek as a tear spilled, and laughed sadly. "No, I'm upset with you because I mentioned something in assurance. You spoke without thinking when I told you about my struggles and the difficulties I was having with my family." Rasheeda's jaw tightened as her eyes grew wide. "I kept my mouth shut. I wanted guidance, so I told Kirk. And you know what? Bambi told Scrappy, and Kirk told Bambi. And now everyone is aware. But you want to attack me as though I'm the bad guy." Now Mendeecees moved between them, raising his hands as if that would resolve the issue. "You two need to relax. This is not the appropriate approach." Yandy wasn't finished, though. Her voice was clear but shaky as she got up. "You were to keep it a secret. You were aware that I had issues at home. Everyone knows my business now. But you knew I was trying to hold it together for the cameras. How about you?" She looked back at Mendeecees. "You allowed it to occur." He gave a head shake. "No, it is unfair. I didn't allow anything to occur. It wasn't until later that I even learned what Rasheeda had told Kirk. Yandy, however, didn't believe it. You're constantly aware. Everything is audible to you. You just decide when to be concerned." The producers were rushing behind the scenes. Nobody anticipated that things would become so real so quickly. However, no one dared to shout cut. It was all rated as gold due to its rawness. Every blink, trembling breath, and sidelong glance from the background actors who were trying not to listen but couldn't stop themselves was captured on video. Injured. Leaning forward, she attempted to explain. "Yandy, you must realize that I didn't aim to betray your confidence. I was concerned about you. You didn't appear well. You weren't behaving properly. I had to speak with someone." Yandy laughed. "My suffering somehow becomes a joke in someone else's group chat after you spoke with your spouse." The air was thick with the words. "Mendeecees seems to want to vanish. This isn't why we came here," he said, rubbing his face. Yandy only stared at him with an inscrutable face. This was supposed to be a quiet season, a reset. No reset occurs when individuals continue to putting the treachery on repeat. There was silence among the crew. Rasheeda didn't say anything. Kirk, who had just stepped in silently and heard the tail end, remained still as if he had just joined a funeral. Kirk remarked nonchalantly, attempting to make a joke, "Perhaps you should have kept your marriage stuff to yourself." Yandy gently turned to face him. "Repeat that. Simply put, not everything must be communicated, particularly if you don't want other people to know." Speaking, at that point, Yandy truly lost it. She retreated from everyone as she started crying once more. "You're correct. I should have never." trusted any of y'all. The chamber splintered open. The feeling changed from uneasy to utterly depleted. The helpers glanced down as well, attempting to avoid participating in the scene. Rasheeda got up and grabbed her. Don't leave in this manner. Let's have a conversation. Yandy, however, continued to move. I'm done talking. When the cameras weren't rolling, you all spoke enough. Yandy was sitting by herself outside, wiping her face on one of the cosmetics trailers. Someone handed her a paper towel. She was silently followed by the cameras, which gave her room but did not turn away. Now she was speaking softly, almost in a whisper. I have no idea who I can still talk to. It used to seem like home to me. To sell the tale first, it seems like everyone is now waiting for me to break. Fans were shocked when they later watched the leaked video. Their familiar Yandy was always maintaining her composure and safeguarding her reputation. Here, however, she was disintegrating, and not because of some little quarrel, but because the people she confided in and loved the most made her suffering into something amusing. In the meanwhile, Rasheeda was on the set pacing, clearly distressed. Without a word, Kirk folded his arms and rested against the wall. Mendeecees had left. Nobody even witnessed his go. He slipped out the back. According to some, others said he went directly to his car and sat there without starting the motor for 20 minutes. Rasheeda shook her head when the producers asked her whether she wanted to reshoot, try again, or perhaps record a confessional to clear things up. No, it's already available. I understand that she's wounded, but I'm not the bad guy here. Still, rumors spread. Although they hadn't always been together, someone on site said Rasheeda had been spending more time with Bambi lately. In fact, been spotted discussing something important with Scrappy and Spice, something that clearly bore Yandy's name. After Yandy left the set, the tension persisted. The weight just increased. Without even voicing their opinions aloud, people began to take sides. Producers gathered behind monitors, discussing how to arrange brushes, while makeup artists muttered. As they pretended to, a large portion of the video was too uncut to broadcast. Damage management was of little concern. All they wanted to know was what would happen next. Rasheeda sat in the main room, her arms crossed, her lips pursed, her gaze fixed on the floor as if she was waiting for a defender to arrive. However, not even Kirk did. He watched in slow motion as everything fell apart while he stayed at a distance and drank water like wine. Yandy had not moved much outside. Her face was inscrutable now, a blank gaze that conceals too much, but she had stopped sobbing. Normally quiet, Tia, one of the production helpers, sat next to her and softly inquired if she wanted to go home. Yandy gave a head shake. I'm not going anywhere. Not until I've spoken what I must. Bambi appeared a bit too intrigued when a vehicle drew up a moment later. Everyone understood how this worked, even if she wasn't supposed to shoot that day. When one starts crying, the others start to circle like sharks. Not long afterward, Scrappy also appeared. The cast was putting together like parts of a jigsaw that nobody wanted to finish. With Spice right behind them, Rasheeda rolled her eyes as soon as she saw them come. The panel is here, she muttered. Oh, fantastic. Kirk bent over, and you said, she shook her head and said, no, but I know Bambi. She most likely ran after. Seeing the call sheet, before entering, Bambi drew Scrappy aside and said, if this is about Yandy and Rasheeda, we need to be smart. But none of them realized that she already had her own plan. This is no longer only rumors. Storyline gold. Scrappy arched an eyebrow and said, are you attempting to manipulate this? Bambi grinned and said, no. I'm only attempting to prevent us from becoming entangled in their mess without taking advantage of it. Rasheeda's expression hardened even more as they entered, and she remarked icily, you weren't invited, Bambi. Funny how that works. Spice shrugged, then approached the producers to inquire if the cameras were still in motion. They gave a wide-eyed yes, and she smiled, saying, good, because this is going to get messy. Finally, Yandy got back outside and stood up. She was weary of running, not ready to chat, so she strolled slowly back toward. She didn't flinch as she stepped in, and everyone's eyes were on her. Bambi was the first to speak. So what happened? They sat down again and waited, but the hush was brief. Rasheeda sneered as Yandy turned to face her and said, someone better start talking because the energy in this room is disgusting. That's all you have, really. After everything we've been through, you deceived me, Yandy stated bluntly, and you know it. Spick's ears pricked up as Bambi raised her eyebrows and said, wait, this is about that secret you told her. Scrappy scowled. What secret? Oh, we're discussing that. I thought we couldn't say anything out. Rasheeda stabbed them all. Obviously, it's no longer a secret. Yandy glanced down and said softly but sharply, It was about my mother. The room I confided in Rasheeda because she's meant to be family, and she's been unwell, Yandy added. I've been trying to keep it off the program because she requested me to. I told her that I was afraid and that I was unsure of how to balance the kids, the show, and my personal life. And anyway, Kirk ended up discussing it as if it were a ridiculous joke. Kirk started to say something, but Spice interrupted him. Bambi turned to Rasheeda before he could say, "No, don't. You don't get to speak right now. You really did that," Bambi said. "I was ranting and I assumed Kirk would keep it between us. But he didn't," Yandy recalled, adding that Rasheeda appeared cornered. Then, as if he had been listening outside the entire time, Mendeecees strolled back in, saying quietly, "I messed up, too, and now everyone knows something I wasn't ready to reveal." Yandy shook her head. "I didn't shut you out, but I should have had your back stronger. Was attempting self-defense, and I explicitly begged you not to attempt mediating with Rasheeda. Instead, you texted her behind my back." Mendeecees sat down slowly, and I thought I was helping. "But you weren't repairing anything, you were just trying to make it convenient." "Have lunch with Kirk, you weren't," she said. "That's the one thing I asked you to never do again. Make me feel alone. So what now? Y'all just going to sit here and bleed out while the whole crew watches?" Yandy glanced up, her eyes filled with a mixture of anger and grief. Spice crossed her arms. Rasheeda got up suddenly, saying, "You want to make me the bad guy? Okay, but don't. I think I'm done trying to mend relationships that only work when I'm quiet. Act as though you haven't harmed anybody else, too." Yandy gave her a fierce look. "When have I ever revealed your private life to Kirk and made it a sensitive subject?" Rasheeda didn't respond. The air grew thicker, nobody dared to move. The quiet was sufficient. Bambi eventually broke the silence, which is precisely why I don't trust anyone on this cast. Even the boom mic operator was paralyzed, fearing that any noise would destroy the moment. "And don't tell me it's different for y'all, just because you've known each other longer." Scrappy nodded. "The moment you start thinking someone's got your back, they twist the knife. And at the moment, none of you are acting as though you are loyal to anyone but yourself," Spice said. "Loyalty doesn't imply history. It requires action." Yandy inhaled deeply. "I never wanted to be the girl sobbing on television or the one who said, 'I don't trust you guys.' However, here we are." Mendeecees' face was etched with shame as he gazed at her. "What do you want me to do?" she said without hesitation. "Start by stopping lying to yourself." Fans were already chattering outside the scene, blinked as if the truth finally came out. "You weren't attempting to solve anything. You just didn't want the turmoil to strike your name." Before the day was over, a tape of Yandy's voice cracking mid-sentence, stating that she could no longer trust Mendeecees or Rasheeda, was posted on the site. In a matter of seconds, fan pages went viral, hashtags sprang, Team Yandy Rasheeda revealed hair, and the comments were brutal. Mendeecees was burned for lacking courage, Kirk was hardly addressed, and others backed Yandy by calling her courageous for expressing her truth. Others accused Rasheeda of jealousy. Happened, and it wasn't nice. When the producers returned to the set and asked Yandy if they should stop filming or continue, she just stared out the window before turning back to the "I'm not doing" fake. "The scenes anymore?" he said in the room. "We film the actual if we're going to do it." That words weighed heavily since everything changed all of a sudden, and this was more than just reality TV drama. Nobody moved because of the weight of what Yandy just said, and everyone understood that the damage would not be repaired by the following episode. Stated made it impossible. The typical background noise had stopped, phones were quiet, and producers maintained the reality that had just been revealed was the only sound that could break the stillness. This was no longer about cameras. Rather, it was about damaged pride, betrayed trust, and the type of treachery that doesn't come with a tidy Yandy remained still with his hands clenched and his voice low, saying, "I don't want to perform for y'all longer. I want the truth, even if it means you think I set out to hurt you. You think this was some kind of plan." Rasheeda sat against the edge of the couch, her arms folded firmly across her chest, her jaw twitching as if she were resisting the need to cry. "I think you stopped seeing me as a person and started seeing me as content," Yandy remarked, avoiding a response to that question. "Even terrible as that." Mendeecees glanced from one lady to the other, expecting one of them to crack, apologize, or laugh and claim it was all a misunderstanding, but he knew deep down that this wasn't the case, and neither of them flinched. Spice, the only person ready to act as a mediator at this point, stepped in once more when the tension gradually increased and eventually broke out into tiny cracks. "You two have been through too much to come apart over a little period of time. Like this." Yandy gazed at her, It's not just one instance, it's every instance. Rasheeda glanced down and stated softly, every little silence. Every time I kept it cute for the cameras while they whispered behind my back. I vented instead of whispering, and perhaps that was a mistake. Perhaps I ought to have gone to you. You really want to go there, though? Yandy's brows tightened, but don't pretend like you've always been straight with me either. When I asked Rasheeda months ago if the rumors about your sister returning to the show were true, she gave me a stern look and said, no. 2 weeks later, she's dressed up and filming confessionals. Rasheeda got up, brushing invisible lint off her pants as if she needed something to do with her hands. Producers contacted me behind my back, and Yandy's voice remained level. Then, they said, don't lie. Why do all these women keep dragging each other for doing the same things they've all done at some point? Spice asked Scrappy, as the room altered once again. Scrappy shrugged. I just want this to stop. Mendeecees appeared to be collapsing from the inside out, putting both hands on his face and leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. This is because it's simpler to forgive strangers than it is to forgive your friends. He glanced at her and said, you want it to stop? You were part of it. You were trying to avoid appearing like the evil guy, and now you look like something worse. Fix it. No, she responded. The word neutral struck him more strongly than anything Yandy had said since. At times like this, being neutral was cowardice, not peacekeeping. Security was brought in outside the frame, not because there was fighting, but because the atmosphere was too tense. Tensions were high, and no one knew what would happen next. The footage was too good, too raw, too genuine, and the producers realized they would never catch lightning like this again. So they discussed canceling the following shoot day and perhaps taking a mid-season break. Social media fans weren't resting either, and when fresh videos began to surface from various phones angles that the official cameras didn't even capture, the hashtag began to change. Even Mendeecees' mess was trending after one fan site shared an old video of him supporting Rasheeda during a panel last year. So it wasn't just user teamy anymore, it was Thatcher Trust. Midday Kirk returned to the studio at last, stated, the true issue is that you all believe that friendship entails quiet. As if telling the truth must be met with hatred. Yandy turned to face him and shrugged, saying, you told everyone else my truth before I could even speak on it. You didn't tell me the truth, my wife yelled. Your wife wasn't supposed to tell you. Ain't that what marriage is about? I said. You could have answered, this isn't our business if she had, but instead you turned it into a discussion. Bambi grinned. Kirk isn't sure. Way to say it. Scrappy laughed, then instantly looked sorry. My mistake. If drama were a sport, he would be in the Hall of Fame. I keep asking myself, how did we get here at all? Mendeecees rose up, pacing slowly, attempting to recover himself. That wasn't the moment. Rasheeda glanced at him, and then at Yandy. Perhaps the issue is that we've all been too preoccupied with acting loyally rather than putting it into practice. We were a unit once, but now we're a circus. That struck a deep chord because it was true. At some point, they shifted their focus from defending one another to defending their images. And now those pictures were breaking. Proposed to take a day's break, give everyone a chance to relax, and regroup. Yandy rose up and shook her head. No, let's finish. It would be more messier if we leave now. They relocated to a more private, candlelit room. It was a more subdued atmosphere with fewer people and greater control. But the intensity followed them. Everyone took their seats once more, pretending that nothing had changed. Yandy turned to face Mendeecees and said, do you even think I'm speaking the truth? I think you believe it, he said hesitantly. Wow, wait, he remarked hastily as her expression sank. I understand that you're in pain. Not that you're making this stuff up. Even if that wasn't the intention, I'm arguing that perhaps you perceived things in a manner that seemed like betrayal. Impact is not negated by intent, she said, shaking her head. Bambi nodded. Repeat that. Doesn't erase impact? Yandy said. Intent. Rasheeda appeared to be fighting back tears. Now, I messed up. I didn't mean to hurt you, but I did. And I'll understand if you never trust me again. Yandy inhaled deeply. I'm not sure if I can. There was a slight exhalation in the room, a crack of light in a long, black hallway, but I really don't need to hear that. I'm sorry for not defending